some of us ain't safe to shoot.
What's up, guys? Readiness Reviews here with you again, and this is a B grade MAS-49 from Royal Tiger Imports, a rifle that they supposedly had professionally refurbished. In this video, I will be covering this RTI firearm in depth with inspection, cleaning, and firing in hopes of answering the question of whether or not these rifles are worth the money. Before we dive in deep on this refurbished MAS-49 don't forget to give the video a thumbs up if you like seeing this military surplus firearms content here on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of my future videos. And let me know down in the comments if you would trust a refurbished firearm from RTI. Spoiler alert, this video was an ordeal, so sit back and enjoy the show. Should you happen to pick up a MAS-49 from RTI, B grade or otherwise, it is of paramount importance that you clean it before taking it to the range to shoot. I would actually recommend that with any MAS-49 not just those from RTI, because like an SKS, these firearms have a free floated firing pin, and if the area around that firing pin is not completely clean, it can cause these rifles to have very dangerous slam fires. Aside from cleaning, my specific refurbished example here has a safety issue that needs to be addressed. As I spoke about in the unboxing of this rifle, this stock is very wobbly. Just check that out, rocking back and forth. There's a lot of play between the stock and the receiver. It's really sad to see that on a rifle that has supposedly been professionally refurbished. I was pretty surprised to see how much dust and debris is present on this rifle despite its refurbishment. Look at that sand around the trigger. There is a ton of sand in and around the grenade launching hardware up front. It's as sandy as the beach. The magazine on this one appears to have been refurbished along with the rifle because we can see some old pitting that has new finish over the top. You can see where our steel top cover was all chewed up before they refinished it. This is how the bolt came from RTI. Look at all that grime and gunk on the bolt head. This is the free-floating firing pin I was talking about earlier. There are no springs or anything. It just sits in the bolt body, and even it visibly has some gunk and rust that needs to be taken care of. Inside of our milled receiver here, there's a lot of dirt and grime in all of the corners. We can see some signs of some old rust there on the end of the gas tube, and it's even significantly dirty here at the mouth of the chamber. Bottom line, it needs cleaning. So I guess we'll remove this screw here first. Oh wow, I could probably turn this thing by hand. Look at that! It was barely screwed in. Well, I guess before we take this apart, I'm actually going to go ahead and just tighten this down. And look at that, our stock wobbling issue is solved. I'm really glad that turned out to just be a loose screw. The fact that that was that loose, though, just goes to show you what kind of workmanship they had when refurbishing these rifles. Now that that screws out, we'll invert the rifle, and the stock and trigger group should just come right out. So there's our butt stock. It does have the trigger and fire control mechanism. There's our hammer. Wow, that sounds ridiculously gritty, so I think we're going to need to clean that. This is a very tight fit, as it should be, and there's our full fire control group with tons of sand. This barrel band requires a spinner bit to remove. I wasn't sure if I had the correct one, but it looks like this Wheeler 124202 does fit. That little forked spanner in goes into the specialized screw head, and we can unscrew. Lots of crud on that screw, and then off comes the upper handguard. The lower handguard appears to be held in by a pin. I'll push that out with the end of a cleaning rod, and then off with our lower guard. This wood is all brand new and lovely, and we're left here with our barreled receiver. All of this metal under the wood actually looks surprisingly clean. We can get a glance at the barrel's date here. MAS 1968. I'm going to blast that gas tube out with some of this quick scrub from Shooter's Choice. I think I can just fit this straw into the very end of the gas tube there. I'm going to hit it with a few big blasts. We can tell there's some crud kicking back on the straw here. Oh yeah, rusty crud running down the side there. We know that was exiting through the gas block, because look at all this rusty crap that just ran out of the end of the bore. As far as the gas tube goes, hopefully that's good enough for now. I think I will give it another treatment after taking it out and shooting it though. Since we've really dirtied up where the barrel meets the receiver here, I think we'll give all of that a good toothbrush scrubbing. The inside of the receiver really needed this treatment anyway to get rid of all that leftover grime. You really don't want that being wedged between the receiver and the bolt when you're shooting. Gonna get all down in these corners that were missed in the refurbishment process. I really hated to see how much rust came out of that gas tube. That means this rifle has led a rough life, and it really raises concerns of bore condition. Now that I got everything good and wet, I'll get in there with a paper towel to wipe all the junk away. I think that about does it for the receiver. Let's get some solvent in that bore. Got a 30 cal bore brush here. Wet that with a little bit of this MC7. I'm giving this several passes to make sure it is completely coated, and we'll let that sit for a minute while we revisit some of the other components. We absolutely have to tackle this bolt. I'm going to get in there with this very small 17 caliber bore brush and scrub out the inside. Check out that rusty sludge coming out, and it really is just straight brown rusty gunk. I guess it won't hurt to hit that with some of this aerosol cleaner as well. Now that's looking a heck of a lot cleaner. Quick scrub here on the outside surfaces, and we got to scrub this firing pin too. This should be the cleanest component in the firearm. We'll run a patch through the bore now to pick up that solvent. Holy crap. That's why the bore was so dark in the unboxing. That is a super rusty patch. Patch number 2 is not any better here. And the same old story with patch number 3. To be honest, I don't think there's any chance of getting a clean patch with this rifle. I'm going to run a couple more of these through it until they come out dry, and then give it a good old ballistol patch and call the bore good until after we shoot it. Now that everything's good and cleaned up, it's time to slap this B-grade French battle rifle back together and get it out to the range for a performance test. I don't think it picked the round up. Why would the action be locked? So look at that bent bullet. With the very first round of the rifle, for some reason, upon chambering, it knocked the bullet sideways and got stuck. So the past half hour with this RTI MAS-49 56 has been a cluster. Finally got this one to chamber, and it didn't seem to deform the brass at all. But upon extracting that and chambering another round, we had a slam fire, which luckily I was following my own advice, and the rifle was pointed in a safe direction, so no one was injured. But unintentional slam fires are super dangerous. That slam fire caused the bolt to get stuck, and I had to butt chug it to get it open. Upon opening the bolt, I found that the case was stuck. The side of the rim was actually ripped off in extraction. So this rifle is down for the count as far as range time goes. Let's get it back over to the house and see what's going on. Man, this Royal Tiger refurb has really been a pain in the butt. Let's see if we can get that stuck casing out and see what's wrong with this rifle. So as soon as I got home, I put a little coil around the rim of the case there, hoping that a little bit would go down to the chamber. At the range, I unfortunately did not have a cleaning rod. Against my better judgment, I tried using a little privet sapling as a makeshift cleaning rod. So now not only do we have a stuck case, but we also have a stick stuck down in the bore as well. The most professional way to go about removing that stuck case would be to take a dowel rod that's the same diameter as the bore, so 30 cal, feed it down the bore until it bottoms out in the case, and then tap the case out with a hammer. Unfortunately, I don't have a wooden dowel rod that's 30 caliber. What I do have is a cleaning rod with a plastic jag. This jag is actually 38 caliber. I did a quick test though, and it fits in the bore decently well. So basically what I'm going to do here is feed my cleaning rod with jag down the bore, and then with my rubber mallet here, gently and repeatedly do my best to tap that case out. And there we are, case and stick. That jag that I used to pound it out worked perfectly, and it's still in good enough shape to use it for that same purpose again if I needed to. There's my little privet stick, and this case is mangled. And this little piece of missing rim is actually from our extractor here, where it sort of just pulled the edge of the case off. Something happened with loading the very first round that caused the bullet to be knocked sideways, and it looks like the very edge of the primer was hit by the firing pin. I never tried to fire on the second round. It doesn't seem to have been distorted like the first one was, but neither of these rounds would extract normally, and I had to apply some pretty serious pressure to get them out. Our third round here, of course, was a slam fire, which caught me by surprise. I don't know what caused the bent bullet on this one, possibly a feeding issue, but what I'm pretty certain of is something is up with the chamber causing the rounds to get stuck. So as we've done here on the channel several times before, I'm going to use an electric drill with a 20 gauge bore brush and a little bit of bore solvent to thoroughly clean that chamber and hopefully smooth things out. Well, it was fairly dirty in there. Despite our earlier cleaning, there was still a ton of crud in the chamber specifically. So I suppose that drilling is something that we probably should have done earlier. I figured a good bore scrubbing would have been good enough, but I guess not. Maybe that fixes our issue. Maybe not. The chamber in this might be so bad that it needs a complete polishing to really smooth out. The bad thing about the MAS-49 56 is because it is a rifle prone to slam fires, you absolutely cannot test feed these rifles indoors. You need to be in a safe shooting range with the rifle pointed in a safe direction. And that means before I can even see if that did the trick, we're going to have to take it back out to the range. Now these rifles pose a threat of runaway slam firing, so it's very important when you're function checking these rifles for the first time that you only load one round and that the action is closed with the rifle pointed in a safe direction. So let's chamber our first round of 7.5 French here. No slam fire on that. Let's see if it shoots. It's shot and ejected. So now that I've shot one round, I have the remainder of a 5-shot clip here. Let's give it another go. It looks like she runs. These were my first shots with the rifle on the bench. Unfortunately, I had the elevation on the rear sight set a little bit too high, so this first 3-shot group was really high. Only one of the 3 rounds landed clearly on paper here. We just shot a 5-round clip with no issues, and now I've shot another 3 rounds with no problems. But check out what happens next. That one was normal, but this next shot, so that last round was a slam fire. It kind of double tapped. These guns can be super dangerous. You have to be very careful. Wow, that was a triple slam fire.
That was all of them.
So we finally managed to get her shooting, but is this French milsurp out of Africa a good shooter? Accuracy testing of this rifle was problematic due to all the malfunctions we were experiencing. Of course, those malfunctions being slam fires. In all the shooting that we performed, slam fires occurred more than 50% of the time, and we actually had to resort to single loading just to get rounds on paper. I'm gonna single load a couple here just so we can get some accuracy tests done. This is the best 3-shot group I was able to achieve with the limited shooting we did. By no means is this a good group. I mean, look at it compared to one of our 7.5 French cartridges here, but I would consider this mostly serviceable accuracy. At least the rifle left nice round holes on the target with no signs of keyholing. Considering all the rust we were getting out of it, the bore on this rifle is most certainly worn, but still shootable. For a comparison group, I have one here that my dad shot. In size and round placement, it is very similar to my group up here. So I think it's safe to say that's about what I can expect to get from the rifle. I will mention that the front sight on the MAS-49 56 is extremely large. So large, in fact, that it covered up the majority of these admittedly pretty small targets. And so since it was difficult to make out exactly where you were shooting, that may have contributed to the less than stellar accuracy as well. Just to prove that I'm not a completely incompetent shooter, I did test fire a couple comparable rifles to give us something to compare against. That was smooth. So this group was shot with a MAS-3651 using the exact same PPU ammunition that we shot with our 49-56 here. The MAS-3651 is a French bolt-action rifle, and the bore on my particular example is outstanding, so I'm not at all surprised that it outshot the 49-56 from RTI. I'm not quite sure why my rifle is hitting so far to the left, but regardless, we can see that 3-round group is far better than what I was able to achieve with the 49-56. And then I'm also lucky enough to be the owner of a MAS-49-56 that is chambered in .308. So this group was shot with the same type of rifle, just in a different chambering. I had some vertical stringing, and that's just me sucking. As we can clearly see, this rifle shoots very good. I got 2 in the red, and for a 5-shot group, the overall group size is not bad at all. That particular 308 chambered 49-56 is in really excellent condition, but it still suffers from that same issue of having a super large front sight, making your target hard to see. This is some of our spent brass from shooting. There are a couple dents in these cases now, so the rifle's pretty hard on brass. The primers here are a bit interesting though. The firing pin's severely dented in the primer, and on several of the rounds, we can see where something on the inside there is clipping just the edge of the primer as well. This 7.5 French case came out of my MAS-49, and if we look at it directly alongside the ones from the 56, we can instantly tell that the primer strikes are a lot lighter on the bolt action MAS-36, and there's no sign of that odd extra striking at the bottom there. Also notice how bent the rims on these cases are, where the extractor is jerking on them so hard is deforming it. There's absolutely none of that deformation present with the MAS-36. Just when I think we've finally done enough to get this rifle running smoothly, I notice that the act of firing this rifle is actually causing additional damage. Check out this chip from the top of the tang area of the buttstock. The recoil from shooting this rifle has caused damage to the stock here, and no doubt additional shooting would cause this to worsen. One piece is already chipped out, and this other piece here has a crack in it. This wood is brand spanking new, so I'll attribute that cracking to 2 things. The most important and first of which is poor fitment between the wood and the receiver. As we talked about earlier in the video, it was all wobbly, and although I've solved a lot of that wobbling issue, I can still hear it rattling back and forth a little bit if I work it up and down, so the wood to receiver fitment is a problem, but I also suspect that my particular example here is extremely over-gassed. As we can see here, there's an extreme amount of gas being expelled from around the gas block, and an uncomfortable amount of gas making its way down the gas tube and cycling the action. As I was shooting, I did experience some pretty hot blowback. That is not a problem I run into with my other MAS-49-56, so I'm pretty sure this rifle is way overgassed, and if I had to take a guess about what the cause of that is, it would be very poor internal condition. Earlier in the video, you guys saw all the rust coming out of the gas tube. The corrosion that caused that rust has most likely eaten away the inside of the gas port, enlarging it over time, and in turn allowing more gas to exit the action than what it was designed for. The rifle is literally beating itself to death. So even with all the issues that we encountered with this rifle in terms of getting it in shooting order, the biggest problem is one suffered by the MAS-49-56 design in general. Of course, I'm referring to that issue of slam firing. Yes, this rifle has a chance to slam fire, but so does basically any other MAS-49-56. These rifles have a very heavy action that carries a ton of inertia. That inertia, combined with a floating firing pin, leads to a lot of energy transfer on the primers of these cases. The ammunition these rifles were issued with in French military service had very stiff primers. It takes a lot of force to make that French ammo go off, but the non-military ammo that we shoot today has far lighter primers. A floating firing pin carrying a lot of inertia paired up with soft, modern primers is a recipe for slam firing. And as I said, all MAS-49-56 are susceptible to those issues. First off, you want to make sure that the area around the firing pin is extremely clean. If you're still getting slam fires, there are fixes. There is a replacement firing pin that has been fitted with a spring that will alleviate slam fires that you can get for these rifles. You can also exchange your original steel firing pin for a lighter weight titanium firing pin. But if you don't want to make any changes to the rifle, you can always source French military surplus ammunition with those hard primers we talked about, and that should fix the slam firing issue as well. When we started this video, I posed the question of whether or not these refurbished rifles are worth the money RTI is asking. On these refurbished examples, the price point is about $600, and although that is a good price for a MAS-49-56, there is no way I could recommend one of these rifles to somebody. Frankly, I think James River Armory should be ashamed for allowing these rifles to leave their shop. A professionally refurbished rifle should be functional out of the box, and this rifle most certainly wasn't. The workmanship that James River Armory put into these rifles is extremely sad. Yes, they installed new wood and made the rifle pretty with new parkerization, but they skipped out on even the most basic step of any restoration, cleaning the darn rifle. There is no excuse for this rifle to be as dirty and sandy as it was. They did absolutely nothing to the bore, the chamber, or the gas system. And as we discussed, even the fitment between the stock and the receiver is subpar. Up until now, I've had a neutral opinion of James River Armory. After my ordeal with this rifle, my opinion of them has certainly soured. But I must say I'm not at all surprised to see a rifle like this being offered by Royal Tiger Imports. In fact, it's basically what I expect. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Any milsurp from Royal Tiger Imports is a roll of the dice. It is a gamble. You may get a really nice shooter. You may get an unfunctional hunk of junk. You just don't know until you get it. So if you're considering one of these rifles, keep that in mind and expect to receive a project gun at the best. I know this was a long one, and if you've stuck around until now, I want to extend a huge thank you. If you enjoyed this video or got any value out of it whatsoever, please hit the thumbs up to help it out with the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel for all of my future military surplus firearm videos, and let me know what you thought about the review down in the comments. I will catch you guys in the next video. See you then. Peace.